and then yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Happy Thursday, everybody! Welcome to ACM. Yes, awesome. It's been a hectic week for probably most everybody. Raise your hand if you actually just been through a midterm. Yep. That's a lot of success. Welcome to our sixth meeting of ACM. This is our supposed to be third, but workshop here. Unfortunately, due to Hurricane Matthew, we were not able to do the personal site one. Messed up a lot of things, including a 3D printer. That's the only casualty here at FIU. Aside from that, we'll be posting up notes for your personal website much later. We're going to be kind of doing a merger of the two workshops. We're going to be making a web app that is going to be your personal site. It's going to be really cool. How do we get the next slide? We're going to get over to some club business. So if this is your first time here, we'd love to know you. We'd love to have you follow up our journey to learn programming together here. We are on Facebook and have a YouTube channel where we record all our workshops. We also have a Slack channel here, FIUtech.com. We have our own ACM thing. Continue talking about conversation. All right, so upcoming events. We have our workshop here, Web Apps and JavaScript, today. Then our third general meeting is going to be on the 27th of October. So we have quite a few events that we go to, either hackathons or conferences or other workshops at other clubs here. Usually in this general meeting we'll be resolving scheduling for next events next semester. So we're going to be gauging what time works best for everybody, and we're also going to be taking suggestions on what tutorials or workshops you guys would like to know for the future. So please go there and we'll make your voice be heard. Then 3rd of November will be our data structures workshop. So for our advanced programmers out there who are trying to get their internships and try to lock that down, Alistair Paragas, our president, will be giving a talk on making sure how you can pass those interviews with proper algorithms. Anyway, next. So actually, all right. So for Hack Riddle, which is this week, I believe it's going to be on the 15th, of Saturday to 16th of Sunday. Is a hackathon, first one in Florida, hosted in the MLH circuit, that will be in Daytona Beach at Embry-Riddle. So we have a bunch of car pools already planned out, about 5 cars ready for people, and we're getting a few more going forward. At the FIU Hackers Facebook page and the ACM FIU Facebook page, we have a spreadsheet up there. Please put your name in the car. If you guys do not have a car right now and you guys need transportation and would like to go, please tell us. We'll resolve everything. If it is too late to sign up, don't worry. The organizers have said we can just bring whoever we want to, and they'll take care of you guys. Cars will be leaving FIU around 6 a.m. To 7 a.m. And the drive to Embry-Riddle is around 4 hours. The event then starts at 11:30 a.m. It is a 24-hour hackathon. Food and drinks will be provided, and a few of us are bringing a few earbuds and make sure you're very comfortable. Try to bring, spare clothes, hygiene stuff, just to make it worthwhile. The sponsor list has been confirmed. Boeing will make an appearance over there along with a few other sponsors like Beachfront, a few other Florida people like Solo Dev, and then other sponsors that haven't been listed, but they're going to make an appearance there anyway. So it's going to be a great event, and it's also going to be MLH sanctioned, so that means it's going to be good and not great. So we have a bunch of mentors over there, so if you have no idea how to program at all whatsoever, we're going to have people like myself or other industry professionals going to be helping you out with your application journey. So we would love to have you over there. Again, it is this Saturday. If you still, if you have homework to do and you don't have time, I say still go anywhere. It's probably one of the most productive places to get programming work done. So if you have an assignment that you're not really working on, go there and have help. Have people help with your job. It's gonna be great. All right, so we're gonna be started on the workshop. So, few terms and few things we want to get taken care of before we get you guys programming. So first off, if you guys have a laptop, take that out. If you guys don't, this will be recorded. Don't worry, and notes will be put on GitHub. We also will need NodeJS. So if you do not know what that is, NodeJS is a JavaScript runtime that allows you to run JavaScript as similar to an application. So if you do not have that installed, go to nodejs.org. Take care of that right now. If you guys already know about it and already have it installed, and you went to our preparatory workshops, cool. We won't spend too much time on it. Yes? Node, NODEJS.org.
4.6 or
4.6, it's stable too. Alright, so I'm going to be telling you guys what we're going to be building here today. So, while you are going on your job search and while you are trying to make a name for yourself in the development community, usually you will make a personal website so you can tell recruiters and other people what do you do. GitHub has this wonderful feature called GitHub Pages, where you have free hosting for every single username that you have on GitHub. If you don't have that set up, we'll take care of it later. Right now we're going to be focusing on the web app, and that's taken care of later. But this website will allow you to do some pretty cool things. Usually, web pages were done purely HTML. You just modified your file, and if you wanted to, add an event, you would have to manually add it. Well, with web applications, you can do dynamic content, where the content of the page is actually decided by whatever the web page is interfacing with. So that leads us to the first term, the document object model. So whenever you go to any web page, let's use Facebook for example. Facebook has a bunch of elements that construct based off of what Facebook servers are telling your computer to render. So there's a bunch of frameworks that do this, like Angular, React, all JavaScript frameworks. They basically use JavaScript code to make HTML. But we won't be doing that. We'll be actually kind of learning it the hard way. But that means you actually will understand how web applications work. These are the same concepts that are actually going into hybrid applications. So the apps that you have on your phone, some of them are actually just web pages. They don't behave like them because you have frameworks that power them, make it look and feel like a native application. But in reality, it's just JavaScript. Second, we'll be learning about the application programming interface. So an API is a method of how you can communicate between different services and different programs so you can populate your content. So let's say I have a resume and I turn my resume into a server. I can hit that server and then basically get all my work history on my web page. Instead of me having to go to my HTML file and manually change my job description, I can probably go to LinkedIn and then get all my LinkedIn account information with all my current work history and all my reviews, all my recommendations. And I can have it appear on my website. So whenever my boss tells me, Angelo, you're the worst employee ever, now I can go on my website. So understanding these terms are going to be crucial for you guys when it comes to constructing your web page. Also, we're going to assume two things. You're going to assume that you already know CSS, but if you don't know it at all, don't worry about it. We're going to be using something called Bootstrap. So CSS is already done for you. And we're also going to assume how HTML tags are already done. So if you guys have ever done small little programming when it comes to like markdown languages, like body tags, p tags, h1 tags, we're going to assume that you already know that. If you don't, follow along, you'll eventually learn it. So we're going to get started. And I believe we're going to show you our simple structure, and you can change the page right now. So if you go to our, next one, right, and then go to our Atom.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
All right, cool. So we have a simple project structure. So this is our front end. So our front end basically is whatever the user sees in a web application. So again, we use a Facebook example. Whenever you go to like a developer console, or remember if you guys were kids and you accidentally press F12 at your computer, you're like, oh my god, what was this? Well, this is most of the stuff. Our front end is basically HTML, CSS, and then whatever JavaScript you have to use in order to communicate with the server. So the front end doesn't really do much at all. In most cases nowadays, front end actually does nothing. But what it does is that basically, well, in this case, what our front end is doing is that it's going to be doing two things. It's going to be calling Bootstrap CSS, so we can actually have our work done for us when it comes to laying out the document. And we're going to be calling Font Awesome, which is another CSS file that allows you to get cool fonts and also like icons. So whenever you see like the social icons like Instagram, Facebook, that's actually not photos. That's SVG vector graphics done in CSS. Really powerful. If you go scroll all the way down, we have our script links at our web page, which gives us all of our basically power behind our website. So main.javascript, we'll get into that later. but this is the second one right here. Remember I was talking about frameworks slightly earlier before, like Angular and React. We're going to be using something called jQuery. So, a little bit of history lesson. In 2012, 2013, in order for us to modify the document, which is basically our HTML that you said before, we used jQuery, which is basically JavaScript, to manipulate that for us. It was very cumbersome. We'll actually find out why. But it was probably one of the only ways in order for you to actually make reactive web applications without having to use PHP, which is terrible for its own reasons. Anyway, so we're going to get started, and Alistair will now start driving us through the application. So he's going to start actually making the backend first, and then changing the content here. So actually, slightly more than so every single tag here basically has its own place of a website. So if you're actually to click the HTML of this project, and you'll see how it looks like, and we're going to see what we're trying for, and we're also going to try to fix. So this is very skeletal. And then I believe we should probably send you guys this front end after we guys make the back end, and you guys can see it.
Projects.
Just tell me while you're talking.
Yep. All right, the next. Hold up.
All right, so it's going to look really bad. It'll be all right. We'll fix it.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, local internet is so slow. If we're reading our own file on the computer. All right, so this is how it's going to work. So we have our your profile photo, along with your name, with a description, pointing to other content and links, and then we're going to make all your social media available to it. So now it looks very ugly. That's okay. We're going to fix that. Bootstrap has all the CSS stuff done for us, so all you have to do is just point it to the proper tags, and then Alistair will get into it. So we're first going to start working on the backend, so we actually can start populating this. And take it away.
Okay. So we're going to start out with NodeJS. So we're going to assume that you have Node installed. And basically what our backend will be doing is it'll be accessing a file with your personal information. And we'll also be hitting up a API. In this case, we're going to be hitting up a weather API to return the current temperature for today. So quickly make a folder for this backend project, separate from the front-end project. I don't know where you are right now. Yeah. Put it on the same folder as. Yeah. Okay. So that's the front end. Okay. So I'm going to make a folder in the same directory where the front end ACM JavaScript Workshop folder is in. So I'm just going to create that folder. So backend JavaScript. And now I'm going to CD into that same folder that I made. Now assuming you have Node installed, just to make sure that it's working, do node-v. And also add into that 2 ampersand signs npm-v. That'll return to us the version of Node that we have installed and the version of npm that's currently installed with that Node installation. So Angelo's running Node 6.4.0, but you should be fine if you're currently running some version 4 of Node. We're not going to be using any breaking new features of Node.js, so it's fine if you have an older version of Node installed. So what I'm going to do first is for every Node project, it's customary to start it off by running this command. Is it npm init? By running this command called npm init. What npm init does is it'll create a file called package.json in the current folder that you're in. And that JSON file, all it will contain is the name of the project and all of your dependencies. Dependencies are other people's code bases from online that we're going to be using to make our lives easier and to build this project way faster. So I'm just going to accept the name that they suggested I name it. I'll keep the version. For description, I'll put sample backend. You can put whatever you want for these things. My entry point is the JavaScript file that my server will hit as soon as it receives something. So in this case, it'll hit index.js by default. Similar to if you've coded in PHP, it'll hit up index.php. But in this case, it'll hit up index.js. I'll keep the default, so it'll hit index.js. We're not going to have any testing for this. No Git repos and no keywords. Author, you can put yourself in there. I'm just going to put myself in there along with my email. And license, since I plan this to be an open source project, I'm going to put an MIT license on it. It's going to ask you if it's this configuration is okay. Just say yes, and you should be good. So now if we ls into that same directory, I should have a package.json here. And if I cat into that package.json file, I'll get back the configuration that npm init did for me. You have your main here, which is the JavaScript file we hit as soon as we start up the server, project description, the name of the project, version of the project, and other stuff like that. Now, before we get started, we'll install some important things that we'll be using for this project. So one library that we'll install for sure is a library called Express. And what Express.js does is it simplifies making HTTP-based servers for us. If you don't know what HTTP is, it's a way of sending textual data back and forth across the internet from some server to a client being your computers, and the server being some server from some company's set of computers. In this instance, we'll be making that server on our own, but for now, let's do an installation of Express. So if my memory serves me right, the name of the library is Express. And the way I can install any library is by saying npm space install space Express. To confirm that, there's an online website that you can use. I'm going to actually access that right now. I think it's called npmjs.org. Yeah. So I'm just going to confirm that the name of the package that I'm going to be using is actually Express. So if I search Express on here, I should find it. And we see it right here. Express, fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework. So that's the name of the open source library we'll be using. And to install it, all I have to do is do npm install Express. Now I forgot to add the option of -- save. And what -- save does is it'll save the version of Express which we're currently using to package.json. I'll show you an example of that right now. So it'll be installing stuff. This will take quite a while. So while this is installing, is anyone lost currently at this point? Everyone is caught up. You're getting a warning. So where's it?
Yeah, you're gonna get one because no repository field because it's not on Git.
Yeah. If you get a warning, ignore it. As long as you have the package.json file, you're good. So if you notice, it installed Express for us. So now if we inspect our folder, we have this node_modules folder. And what this is it's basically a directory that contains our dependencies for us magically. Now we can easily install code that other people wrote that'll make our lives way easier. And if I inspect package.json by typing cat package.json, I'll notice that here, automatically, the version of Express that we installed, along with the name of the library that we installed, which is Express, is denoted in this file. Now, what's the cool thing about this? The cool thing about this is if someone uses your project, if you commit this repository online on Git, you can literally commit this code base and have the other developer download the exact same open source library that you're using. So you can collaborate with other people regardless of where their location is. They'll have the same exact things that you'll be using, and there shouldn't be any conflicts, theoretically speaking. now that we have Express installed, we have one more library that we'll be using. This library, all it will be doing is it'll make a web request to another API which we'll be depending on. In this case, it's some weather-based API. I actually don't know the name of that library, so I'm gonna use npmjs.org to look for that. So if I go here in this website, npmjs.org, I want to look for something that makes web requests, right? So let's search up for something that makes web requests. Oh, that's too complicated. I'll just say request. And if you saw the autocomplete, it suggested this library over here. I'm gonna read over the docs really quickly, see if it's kind of decent. I think this is kind of decent. I don't want the library that looks too hard. Let me see. This looks kind of legit. I'll install this thing. So I'll go back here, hop back onto my terminal, do an npm install request, because that's the name of the library, -- save. Let it install. It'll take some time installing that thing. It's installing, just installing. By the way, if you guys have any problems, don't hesitate asking for Angelo, Joanir, and Jose for any questions. They're here to help you guys. Okay, so now if I inspect my package.json by doing a cat, I should have request in here, and lo and behold, request is here. And that's really nice, because now the two libraries that we're depending on, whatever developer is working with us and collaborating with us, they have those things also installed once they use our code base. So now let's actually hop on into actually coding our backend server up. So, let me see. I can add. So what I'm going to do at Atom is I'm going to add a new project folder because the backend project is separate from the front end project. I'll go under projects, which is the parent directory, and my backend JavaScript project is right here. So let me hit that up and open that up. Okay. So again, if I inspect my package.json, I have all this cool stuff right here. Let's start writing our backend by creating a new file called index.js, because we need to have an index.js, as that will be the JavaScript file that Node will hit up once it receives some kind of a command from the operating system. In this case, because we're making a backend server, it'll hit up that JavaScript file when someone makes an HTTP request to our server. So I'll make a new file. Okay, it didn't ask me for a name. Oh, save as is right here. So I'm gonna save it as index.js under backend JavaScript. I don't know why it didn't change it to backend JavaScript. Let me switch into backend JavaScript folder. Right here. Save. Okay, so I have index.js here in my project folder. And now let's get into some JavaScript stuff, some basic JavaScript stuff. So in Node, if I want to use some library, the custom is to require it in, and then the name of the library. So we installed Express. I want to use Express, which is that open source library someone else made, but I want to use it. So to pull it into my project, all I have to do is run require and then the name of the library. Now this will return some kind of an object. So I want to store this into a variable. So in JavaScript, to declare a variable, I want to denote a variable by saying var and then the name of the variable. You can name this whatever you want, but I'm going to name it Express. It's customary to name your dependencies it's customary to name the variables holding your dependencies with the same name as the dependencies themselves. And then let's just do a quick console log on Express, because I want you guys to see what's actually being stored on that variable. So once you've done that, let's hop into the terminal. As you can see, my index.js is here. I'll just run node space index.js. What that does is it tells Node, hey, I want to run that index.js file, which is a JavaScript file, as an executable. So once I run that, I get a console log back of all the things that are available to me that is provided by this open source library. Some of it looks too complicated. Don't worry about that right now. By writing console log express, and then by running node index.js. So all of this stuff is provided for us by that guy, whoever wrote this library. We'll be using some of it. You guys can look into the other features later on. There's a lot of cool features that this library provides for us. But for now, let's hop back into this project. So with this specific library, not all libraries do this, but with this specific library, to create an application to bootstrap an HTTP server, it requires instantiating Express as a function call. So I'll show you an example of that. So I'll say app equals Express and then parentheses. By the way, there's two additional things you learned here. In JavaScript, you can do multi-line variable declarations by denoting a comma between your variables, or you can also do this, whichever floats your boat. Personally, I like having this, but you can also do this. There's nothing hurting you from doing this. I'm just going to do this. So now again, if I console log app, I should get something on my console. So I'll just run node index.js, and I get something back. And these are the things that we want to use for our backend server. Specifically, if you look over here, there's a get method right here, which is a function. That get function will want to use that, because that get function, whenever someone makes a HTTP GET request to my backend server, that get function is hit up, and whatever function I actually have stored on that get will be executed. But for now, before we code that up, there's other customary things to do with Express. I'm going to look up the documentation because obviously I don't remember this stuff. So let me just look up Express. If we look over here in the documentation, there's an app.listen here. So we'll want to do the same thing in our project. And I'll explain to you what that thing does. So we'll do app.listen, and then at this case I'll put 8,000. You can put any integer greater than 2,000 but less than 10,000 if you want. I'm just putting 8,000 because it's customary for development servers to be at port 8,000. What 8,000 is a port number. Every application in your computer, if it communicates over a network, it will be emitting a certain port number that some other program from your same computer or some other computer from the internet can access. In this case, I'm using port 8000 so that any other program in my current computer can access my backend through that port. So in this case, our front-end project can access the backend application by hitting up port 8000. You might wonder what this dot is. what app actually is that it's a JavaScript object. And with objects, just like in Java, objects have methods and they have properties. In this case, listen is a method on that object, but there are properties in this app object as well. We'll not go into the details of that right now. Okay. So we have that running. I'm gonna add in some stuff in here. So we want to listen to that port, but I also want JavaScript to kind of notify me when the server is running and listening to that port, right? So app.listen, and again, this is from Express. This is not specifically every JavaScript library. It'll execute this function as soon as I hit up index.js and as soon as Node is listening to port 8000. It'll execute whatever is within this function. And again, this is how you write functions in JavaScript. This is what's known as an anonymous function because this function doesn't have a name. It's just a function. What I'll do here is I'll just write console log and I'll write hey, backend server is listening at port 8000. So now when I run this index.js project and it's listening on port 8000, every time, once it listens into that port number, it'll console log that thing. So if we hop into my console and I do a node index.js, notice that the execution didn't end. And it returned a message to us saying, hey, backend server is listening at port 8000. What's happening right now is that Node has turned into a server for us, a server application for us. It's not going to halt execution until something bad happens in the program. But as soon as I make a request to the server, this file will just serve us things that we needed to be served. If I want to stop the execution of this for some reason, I can just do a Control-C. That's a process kill. But when you actually want to run this server for the world to see, you wouldn't want to do that. You would want to let the server just keep running on its own. But that's nice because now we're getting a message back to confirm that the server is actually running at port 8000 when we start our project. So let's code up the first meat of this application. I'll do a method call. In this case, as I talked about earlier, there's a get method on this app object that we'll be using. And I'm going to look into the documents about what that get method holds. Now, if you get overwhelmed, just always read over the documentation. Not everyone remembers all these things. The documentation always helps. And one of the good things about developers that they learn to pick up is they learn to pick up reading documentations really quickly, and they become accustomed to reading it. So just get accustomed to reading a documentation. In general, NPM gives a very light documentation, but if you go to the actual GitHub code base for this project, there's a more, there's a better, what do you call this, documentation for it. There's also an official website for Express. I'll just hit up the API reference because I want to see how things look like. I want to use the app.get method. So I'm going to look up the signature of that method. So we want to use the second signature we have here, the app.get, and then it accepts a path and a callback. So a path is some server relative URL that we want to specify so that when our server hits, this thing gets executed. In this case, I'm going to put a simple dash because I want this get method to execute every time I make a get request at the default server URL, wherever the server is running. But if I say /ACM, for example, and my server is on whatever.org, if I make a GET request to whatever.org/ACM, this GET method executes at that point. It wouldn't execute if I just hit up whatever.org. So if I want to have it execute whenever I hit up whatever.org, I want to leave it on the slash. Now if we look at the function signature again at the documentation, you can see that on the second parameter, it accepts a callback. And a callback, what it is just a function, an anonymous function. Much like that app.listen that we have a function right here. This is an anonymous function. It's also known as a callback function. We'll do the same thing here. Now, if we read over the documentation, this callback function, where is it? This callback function can be a bunch of things. Okay. This this function that we'll be denoting has a lot of things. In this case, we'll be using this signature, where this function accepts a request object and a response object. So over here, I'll just make an anonymous function, just like how we did with app.listen. And my anonymous function will be accepting a request object and a response object. Request object and response object are just objects created by Express automatically for us as soon as Express detects that something is making a GET request to that path. Is anyone lost at this point currently? Don't hesitate asking us questions, by the way, if you get lost with something.
Does everybody understand what's going on?
Everyone is good at this moment? Okay.
I
So,
don't know, like, feel free to ask.
yeah.
Everybody's been through this.
Everyone's been lost at a point, so don't get scared when you have a problem. Like, just make sure to hit us up. We'll try to resolve it. So what I'll do at this point is I'll do another console log. I want to get a notification when this path is hit, when someone makes a GET request to my server. So I'll make console log. Excuse me. I'll make a console log and I'll say, hey, someone made a GET request. What this will do is, as soon as someone makes a GET request to my server, this console log will pop up and will let me know that someone actually made a GET request to my server. So what I'm going to do is run my server right now at node index.js. So node notified us, hey, the backend server is listening at port 8000. So what I'm going to do to hit up this server is I'm going to go to my browser, go to localhost, colon or semicolon, it's colon, port 8000, because that's where my server is running. I'm gonna hit that up. I didn't code a response for it, so the request will seem like it's hanging, and then at a certain point the browser will complain that the server didn't respond with anything because I didn't program that yet. But if we look at our terminal, you'll see, hey, someone made a GET request. So it detected that someone made a GET request to my server. Again, if I refresh that request, so I make another separate GET request, right? So I'll make another GET request. That's a separate GET request. Now I should have 2 GET request messages on my server. And lo and behold, I have 2 GET requests on my server. So this is exciting because now our server is detecting when someone's hitting us. So someone in the internet could be hitting our server, and we have knowledge of this now. So this is pretty cool. But we want to make it cooler, right? Because we're cool devs. We want to make it cooler. So what I want to do is I want to send a response back to that person, whoever that person is trying to access my server. So I can look up the documentation for this, but since Express provides us the response object, there's a bunch of methods that are available on this response object. So all I'll do is, again, go to Express, see what's on the response API. So they have a response API here. What should we do? So we want to send a response to them. So there's a specific method on this response object called send. And that send method, all it does is it sends a text message back to whoever hit our backend server up. So I'll say rest.send, and then I'll put in strings the message that I want to send back to that person who hit us up. So, hey, thank you for hitting me up. Here's my digits. And you can put your phone number there. I'll also want, this is customary in Express. This is only in Express. Usually Express also has an end method, I believe. Yeah, you have a response.end. So after sending send, I want to do an end. So what that tells Express is, hey Express, when someone hits me up, send this response and also terminate this connection immediately after you send this response to them, because I don't want to talk to them after this point. So let me control C my index.js executable, and now run node index.js. So node notified us that we're running on port 8000. Now if I make a request on this, I get a message back. So to show you that it's legit, I'll hit that URL up again. And look, it's giving us this cool response back. So now we program the server, right, to return a response back, which is pretty cool. Just for debugging purposes, I'll leave the console log here. I didn't think of that. So, hey, someone made a GET request. I'll leave that up there. Just so we can make debugging a lot easier for stuff. Now, a cool part that we're going to do is we're going to store some file in the server, and we want our application to read this file and return the contents back into the browser. So what I'll do is I'll leave a text file here. I'll create a new text file in my project. Name it, let me see. Let me save it as, I'm going to save it as info.txt on my backend server project. I'll name it info.txt. And then on this info.txt, because I'm a giant nerd, I will write my information in JSON because no one else in the world does this. So JSON is just a custom that a bunch of people made, telling the kind of people, programmers, the kind of information, how information should look like when a server communicates with another server. In this text file, I'll just make a simple JSON object and I'll leave it as it is. So here I'll put my name, and I'll put the value as Alistair. In a JSON object, by the way, this is what's known as a key. This is what's known as a value, and both are strings. I'll put here a description about me. I'll put here a description about me here. So I'll put a description, you know, a tiny description about myself. And feel free to customize this against your own. So I'll put,
all of you wear glasses.
Not all of you wear glasses. Not all of you are Asian. So customize as you see fit. Software engineer, computer science, major,
On McDonald's.
Apparently, I work at McDonald's, so we'll put software engineer at McDonald's. Um, totally legit. For a bunch of other stuff, I'll put links here to my social media because I feel like people need to know about me in the social medias. So I'll put my GitHub link here. I'll put my Facebook link here. And I'll put my Twitter link here. And you know what? Why not? Let's put our LinkedIn in here too. Because I really want to show people my social media. So again, if you're lost, this is just a JSON object with a bunch of key value properties. You have your key and you have your value. So for the name key, you have the value of Alistair. For description, you have this description, and so on and so forth. This looks kind of tedious and boring right now, but trust me, this gets interesting later on. As we parse this, we'll see what JavaScript does with this. But for now, feel free to do this. What I'll do is I'll go to the internet, look up my GitHub. I'll just store my GitHub URL. So this is my GitHub. I'll just store my GitHub URL here. Let me get my Facebook link. I think it's Alistair Paragas. Yep, that's the link. So I'll put that on my Facebook, my Twitter. And again, feel free to customize this against your own links because we want to build a server that's about us, you know? So that when someone hits us up, they know what we are about. So I think that's my Twitter. So let me put my Twitter in there. Put my Twitter in here. And finally, my LinkedIn. Let me grab my LinkedIn. I think it's in/Alistair. Oh, profile not found. So LinkedIn is way more complicated. Let me get my URL here. Alistair Paragas.
You just go to your profile and then right under your picture, click profile.
Oh, but I'm in Angelo's profile.
What?
I'm in Angelo's profile.
Oh.
Yeah, right here. Okay, let me grab this link. Drop it in here. Okay. So I'll grab my LinkedIn here. And we should be good. So this is just a bunch of basic information about me, supposedly. I'll store that on a text file. And now what we'll do on our index.js file is actually read this file and parse that JSON as a JavaScript object. So this is one of the cool things about Node is that it's just not boring JavaScript. It's JavaScript with superpowers. What Node actually is that it's a JavaScript runtime, as Angelo told you, but it has low-level access to certain things because under the hood, JavaScript is Node.js is actually C++. So if I go to Node's website, we'll be using one of the APIs that Node provides for us, and that's the file system API. So I'm just gonna go Google search the file system API for Node. So we hit up here, we have a file system API. And again, I'm gonna read the docs because I don't remember any of this. So I'm gonna consult the documentation. So we wanna do a read file. We wanna read that file, that specific file. So I'm gonna use this API up. So to use the file system API within Node, you have to access a specific library name. In this case, the file system API in Node is available as the FS library built within Node.js. So what I'll do is switch back into my project, store that file system library on my FS variable. So I'll say require FS. So now if I console log my FS object, once this server kicks off, it'll dump a bunch of things, a bunch of methods that are available to me in this FS object. So let me kill this server by doing a Control C. And again, let me run node index.js. So if I look over here, I get a bunch of stuff that's available to me because of this file system library. A bunch of methods, a bunch of properties that I can use. But all I want to use is, let's see over here. You have the read file here that we want to use. I don't know if I can see it. Read file. Right here, we want to use the read file method, which is a function that's available on that object. This is a reminder, since we're running this backend server, we want to Control C it to kill that process. So what I'll do here is every time someone makes a GET request for me, I want to access that file that I created. So I'll say fs read file and then the name of the file. So info.txt. This is very customary in Unix. If I want to access a file that's on the same folder as my current file, I just denote /the name of the file. In this case, index.js and info.txt are in the same folder. So to access that file that is in the same folder, I denote that I want to access that file by saying /the name of the file, which is info.txt. Yeah. This varies on Windows. There's a note on the API documentation about this. But I think in Windows, it's the /, right? It's the / or something like that. I think Node did something with 4.0 where they fixed this problem so that it's custom, it's standard across every platform, regardless of whether it be Mac, Windows, or Linux. So I'm going to consult the API because I forgot what the other thing did. So let me do a Control F on read file. So if I hit up read file here, it allows me to pass in an anonymous function that responds whenever that file has been read by Node.js. So I'm just going to make that anonymous function. So in here, I'll make a function. And I forgot already what that function accepted. It accepts an error object and a data object. So I'll put error, put data here. So what Node does is that if there's an error for some reason on reading this file, it'll return an error object. But if it doesn't have an error object, that means that it has read the stuff successfully. So it'll return to me some stuff on data. It'll return a bunch of information on data, which is basically the contents of info.txt. So I'll make a simple if statement here in JavaScript. If error, I want to do a console.error on that error. So I want to leave a message if I can't read that file successfully. So I'll say I wasn't able to read the file for some reason. After that, I want to do a simple return because this is an anonymous function that gets hit up every time I'm reading this file, which is hit up every time I'm making a GET request. I want the execution of this function to end immediately when I hit up an error. So just I denote that I want to end the execution by doing that return statement. else, if we do get something back, I want to console log what I get back. So I'll do a console log on data because I want to see what kind of data do we get back. So that seems fine and dandy. So we'll do a node index.js. So again, the backend server is running. I hit this up. Again, it returns me the same response that I programmed it to respond. Now, okay, we got a syntax error here. And Node is actually pretty descriptive about the syntax error, and apparently I misnamed a variable. So here, I'll put console if error instead of if error, because error didn't exist as a variable. I actually wanted to check the error variable that I'm getting, the error parameter that I'm getting from the anonymous function. I want to check if it's truthy. In JavaScript, there are truthy and falsy objects. Truthy is if an object is basically not equal to false, it's not null, it's not undefined, it's some object. If it's some kind of an object, JavaScript will return true for it. So in this case, since error is some object, I don't know what it is, but I know for sure it's not false, undefined, or null. This if statement will be hit if error is an object. And this message will run. So let me run this thing again. Hey, backend server is running. Let me hit up the backend server. So hit it up successfully. So we got a bunch of stuff back. We got a buffer of hexadecimal. Or it looks like hexadecimal. So I don't want to get this kind of useless looking stuff back. I want to get a string back. So what the read file API allows us to do is if we consult the documentation here, it'll allow me to pass in an encoding. In this case, UTF-8. We'll use UTF-8. Just a side note, everything at the lowest level is stored in binary. So by default, Node will give me that binary representation of the data if I don't tell it to decode that binary data into something. In this case, I'm telling Node, hey, I want to get a string back. And so to get that data back as a string, I'll ask for it to return it to me using the UTF-8 encoding, which will parse that binary back into a string. So over here, I'll add UTF-8. Yeah, UTF-8 parameter back. I'll make sure to run my backend server again. Hey, backend server is running. We hit our server up, so we get a GET request. So now if we look at our console, lo and behold, the stuff that we stored in our file, we got it back in our terminal. So it's console logging this perfectly. This string that's contained inside this file is being returned to us, which is beautiful. This is what we want. Now this is JSON. JavaScript treats JSON as a string, but we want to treat this string as an object in JavaScript. So in JavaScript, not in Node, but in JavaScript, there is a globally available variable called JSON. I'll put that here, JSON. And that JSON variable, JSON object, has two available methods. It has stringify and it has parse. What stringify does is it accepts a JSON object back and it returns a JSON string. Parse, what parse does is it receives a JSON string and returns back a JavaScript object. In this case, data is a JSON string. We want to get it into a JavaScript object. So what do you think should we use? Should we use stringify or should we use parse? Parse or stringify? If you get it wrong, You know, no one's gonna judge you.
You say it would already return it as a string.
Right now, we're getting this as a string, so data is a string,
Yeah.
right? We want to get back a JavaScript object. So what should we use? Should we use stringify
Or parse.
or parse?
I
Yeah,
think it's parse.
parse. So you got it right. So we'll use the parse method, right? So once again, I just plug that in, JSON.parse. Should that return to us a JavaScript object? So I'll run this thing again. I'll make a GET request to my server. And lo and behold, this JavaScript string has been converted to a JavaScript, this JSON string that we've made, that now we're parsing, has been converted to a JavaScript object that we're just console logging out. Now, why is this special? The string before, we weren't able to do anything with it. But now, since it's an object, I can do things with this object. I can access specific properties within this object. So let me store that JSON parse into a variable, actually. So I'll do a var object. Actually, let's call it myInfo. MyInfo equals JSON parse data. Now, if we console log myInfo.name, if we look over here, info.text was a key. This should return back the value stored under that key, which in this case was Alistair. Or Alistair Progress. So if I hit up this thing, I execute my backend server, and I run my browser, go back to my terminal, I get back the value that was stored on that key, which is Alistair. So this is a full-blown JavaScript object. We've converted something that's stored as a string into a full-blown JavaScript object. This is one of the secret things that's neat about JSON, is that it allows people, programmers, to send strings between servers, but because of JavaScript, they can parse this string back into an object within a programming environment. In this case, a JavaScript object. The cool thing about JSON is that it transcends programming languages. In Python, you can parse this same string, this data, which is a string. If you use Python, you can actually parse this into a Python object. So this specification transcends programming languages. Now what I want to do is I actually want to return back that data that I stored in my file into the front end. So I'll do a neat little hack in here. I'll declare a variable here, var myInfo. As soon as this file is read, I will store the information. Actually, no. Let's ignore this. Let's not put the var here. I want the rest.send, which is when the server executes and gives us back a message. I want that to execute after the file has read. The file has been read. So I want to put that here. Now, when you work with Node, this is one of the kind of mind-boggling things with working with it. Node is known as an asynchronous, they tout themselves as an asynchronous, single-threaded JavaScript runtime. So breaking those down, what asynchronous means is that if someone makes a request for something, JavaScript won't get back to you immediately. JavaScript instead will accept the function and execute that function as soon as that process that you commanded it to receive has finished executing. It's the same way as like a manager telling a worker, hey, when you're done doing this piece of work that I assign you, give me the proof of your work. Give me your work. That's all we're doing here. We're creating a function that JavaScript would execute after the command we've sent out has executed correctly and perfectly. So in this case, my info is now an object, and I have my name on it. So I want to return all the information that is in that object. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna return back a string. Oh, crap. I'm gonna return back a string. So let's change our return string. So I'll say, hey, my name is. We'll put that blank. My name is blank, and my description is blank. So we'll do a bunch of string concatenations here. So this is, by the way, how you concatenate strings in JavaScript. I have two strings here. I want to add the values on that JavaScript object that we created, right? So I'll do a myInfo dot description, since the string that we want to access is in that key, that description key of myInfo, which is an object parsed from JSON. And I want to parse out the name from that as well. So I want to do myInfo dot name. So I'll just drop it to the next line to make it a bit prettier. So let's end the execution of this by doing Control-C. Run node-index.js again. So now if I hit up my server, it should return to me relevant information back. And lo and behold, we got the information we had back. This is the stuff that we've stored on a text file, and we're getting it successfully into our front end. This is really exciting. You've learned how to parse a file. Now you're turning the file contents of that on your web server. Yeah. Wait, what was that? If it can't get file, that might be a permission error. So if you have a permission error, I'd look into chmod. Like a quick fix for that I would do right now is chmod 777 space 777 space the name of the file. That'll make it accessible by any user on your operating system. Do you have a Mac or Windows? You have a Windows? Yeah, I don't know how to. Huh?
There's no chmod. though.
There's no chmod.
Windows. Yeah, recreate file.
Yeah.
Recreate file, and then go to properties, and go to security. No, not share. Security. Permissions.
So we're in here. We're accessing the info.txt. Yeah. Is anyone lost at this moment? Anyone is lost? No one's lost.
So what would happen if RES decided if it was outside? Example was in the real API.
Yeah, it would actually act differently. So, what happens is if it's outside, rest.send will execute immediately after you send out the command, the read file command. And since JavaScript is asynchronous, what will happen with that is you send out a command, and then as soon as you send out that command, it'll execute the rest.send. Now that command, that guy who you assign work to might not be finished yet. So since he might not be finished yet, you might be sending something without getting his response back. That's why you want to execute it within the function.
I see that document. Is that a method of the RES.send, or is it a method of like RES?
That's a method of RES.
So it's like RES.send first, and then does .end.
Yeah.
After that.
So that's a feature of this library.
So like,
Yeah.
Wait, so that sentence came up on the terminal?
But that's from the front end.
Which one?
My name is.
Oh, the send is what's coming out on the browser. So we're sending that to the browser. The console log is on the terminal. Yeah, the send is on the browser.
RDS to send, I just keep getting the hey backend service listing at port 8000. It's on the browser, not.
It's on the browser. So if you refresh the URL that we're hitting up, you should be getting something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're getting something? Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
no problem. So, so someone brought up a good question where the guy brought up something which is really good, and that is, if I have rest.send in here, what would happen if I have it coded so that rest.send runs immediately after the fs.read file. Let's see how it looks like. We'll do a control C, we'll do an execution, and I'll refresh my browser. If I refresh my browser, notice that it gets a variable undefined. So the variable isn't defined yet. So the problem with that is that in JavaScript, variables are what's known as function scoped. So this variable isn't available to this method because this variable is in this anonymous function. So the scope of this variable is only within this function. Anything outside of this function cannot access this variable. Now the other problem with this is that read file is a command is sent out to read some file, but Node might not be finished yet with reading that file. So what you're doing here is you're telling Node, hey, read some file, and I don't care how quickly you're reading that file. As soon as I send out this command, I'm gonna also send a command out to print something on the browser. And this is where, again, asynchronous, JavaScript and NodeJS's asynchronicity kicks in. This is what asynchronous means. It's not synchronous. Just because this line is after this line doesn't mean this line will execute right after the execution of this line. What actually happens is I tell Node to read the file, this executes, and then this anonymous function gets called back. This function executes after, because it takes some time from the operating system to read the file before actually doing stuff with it. It's much easier to print something out than actually read a file. So as you get more advanced into JavaScript, if you think about this, the more complicated your programs get, the more uglier they can seem to get, because you just have an infinite nesting of functions within functions within functions within functions. Notice how my anonymous function is already going in this direction. It's going on a rightward direction. If my program is any more complex, it'll keep growing to this side to the point that I'll need like a really long text editor to edit my code. In JavaScript, there are things called promises that allow you to make your code look synchronous. Make it look like it's happening step by step, which is really nice. But for now, we'll cut the details of that and we'll just put that rest.send within the read file. Because we want that rest.send to execute only after we know for sure that Node read the file. So I'll put that there. The cool thing with this is that Java 8 actually took some concepts from Node, in that they also took asynchronous operations in, along with functional programming, which is what JavaScript typically, I would say, shines on. So if you learn asynchronous now, you'll understand Java 8's more advanced features that have come out of the gate now a lot easier. So I'll recommend you, when you get into Node.js, I recommend you to get into depth with the details of this. For now, what I'll do is, instead of sending instead of sending that string, I want my server to return the JSON that this text file is giving me. So instead of parsing that string into an object, a JavaScript object, I'll just dump that JSON string in the server, because I'll let my front-end web application parse it sometime in the future. So I'll end my execution, run my execution again, hit this up, and lo and behold, I get the same JSON string that I had stored on my file now on my browser. Is anyone lost at this point? This is just the same JSON string. Yeah.
How are you printing that? Because you need the console.log.
So console.log is for everything that's being emitted into the terminal. Rest.send is for everything that's being emitted into the browser. So right now we're emitting into the browser.
Right, can you delete the rest, whatever you were going to send the rest send?
Let me see.
Oh, that.
Yeah, I didn't delete it. I just changed what I'm returning back, the message I'm returning back. So instead of returning that message that I was returning, I'm just returning a JSON string that I was parsing out of the file. Now, you guys have done a lot. You've made a web server, you've read a file. Now we'll do one really interesting thing, and that is to hit up an API. So there's a lot of APIs across the internet. There's government APIs that allows you to access live crime data. There's APIs for machine learning. Microsoft has a bunch of free APIs where you give it a picture and it'll even tell you the actor or whatever natural land formation is in that picture. But for now, we'll use an API called Wonderground, which is Weather Channel's Weather API. They actually have a nice documentation. So we'll consult that documentation right now. We'll do wonderground.com. Actually, let's Google search for Wonderground API. That's much better. Gets to the point. Wonderground API. Hit this up. I want to look into the JSON or XML formatted JSON or XML formatted thing. Explore my options. So apparently they're charging now for something. I didn't know that. I just want to get the free stuff. Actually, you know what? Ignore this. Let's just Google search for another weather API. And this is the cool thing about APIs, is that everything out there is an API. Facebook has an API, Twitter has an API. If you want to get data about people, the way to access this data is through APIs. And there's so many APIs out there. It's basically your keys to controlling the world. If you know how to play with APIs, you can control anything. There's open weather map here. This may be decent. Let me see the crap. They're also pricing. Let me see something else. So this is unusual, but usually people don't charge for weather APIs. But these people felt like being dicks as well. Yahoo, they have a complicated query thing. I don't want to use that. I just want to get a simple API. No one has a simple API. Let's see.
Oh, the Google Maps API.
That's more complicated. Google Weather API. Maybe Google has a Weather API. I'm pretty sure they do. They're Google. Oh my god. Most likely they do, actually.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure they do.
Here, I will for you.
Oh, I don't want to see your point.
How about this one? Call weather data from a location using that API call.
Yeah, I think they price though, right? They have a charge.
Yeah, I don't know. Open weather map.
Yeah. Let's look up open weather map. So, as you can see, this is not scripted. We're actually coding this out in real time. So we're just searching for an API around. And feel free to do this on your own free time. Just search up APIs you want to connect to. see cool data out there and do something with that cool data. Right now, there's current weather data. This seems decent. You can search by city name. So apparently, if we hit this URL up, it returns London. Now, because these people are dicks, they require invalid API. They require an API key, which means they're charging for their thing. Let me look up something else. So instead of using weather API, let's just look up temperature API. Temperature API by city. So let's see. Local weather. Let me hit this up. So free. They have a free here. So if I pass in, let me just test out something. If I pass in Miami. Oh. Q equals Miami. So all of these people require parameter keys. You know what? We'll just bust one out really quickly. So what I'll do is I'll quickly sign up for an API key. This is not complicated. So an API key, typically these people, what they do is they ask you to create an account. The API key allows them to identify you as a developer so that they can limit the amount of requests you make, because some people get really abusive with API requests. So I'll make an account right now with my email. Yeah, you can do the same thing right now. Let's make a really quick account. Make a really quick account. Apparently Apragus is in use, so maybe I do have an account already. So I didn't even know that. Maybe I did use this people before. Let's see. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, apparently I did have an account already. Okay, so let's use up their API. So do Wonderground API docs. Actually, no. First, I want to get my API key. So actually, yeah, that would be better. Ground API. They have an API. They should have some API sensor. So I would just want to get my API key. Again, this is one of the nice things you learn as a developer. You learn about API keys and all this stuff like that. Where is my API key? Key settings, I think. Oh, right here. Okay, so apparently I was experimenting with this back when I was in high school. So this is my API key. So I'll just store that API key as a string on my JavaScript object. So I'll do var API key equals that string, which now I can use. And then with using that API key, I can make requests to Wonderground apparently. So let's see their documentation about this. Is it this one? Okay. You have to make an account. Yeah. So if you go to key settings, you'll get the API key. So let me just do a test request against these people, because I haven't used this API in a long time. Let me also read a bit of the documentation that they have. So let me look up Wonderground API docs. I want the JSON version of this Wonderground API. So this is the format that they typically want. They have Q dash the state you're in dash the city you're in .json. So I'll put fl dash miami.json, and that should return me a bunch of information about Miami. Now they require the API key. as well. Missing an API key. So let me see how you add an API key in. So show response. So in this example, they're actually using my API key to make this request. So I see my API key here. So missing key. Correct. So I'm providing my API key. They have some examples here. Let me just check the code examples. So this is PHP. I want to see where I append my API key. Okay, these people. Let me change this a bit. Apparently I'm providing my API key, but they're not giving me data back. API underground.com/API. Geo lookup. And then conditions, I think, was it? CRUD. Okay. Let me see. I'm just debugging right now. Oh, okay. So we got an information back. So this is their API giving us a bunch of data back. So notice for Miami, they have a bunch of information. I just want to get the temperature. They have temperature right here, which is really cool. If we provide a different city, San Francisco, for example, they should have information about San Francisco. Yeah. Oh, to CA, yeah. So San Francisco is this stuff. So we'll use the Miami one because we live in Miami. Again, my API key is right here. The 40 whatever. So I'll use that full URL instead of just storing the API key. So I want to make a request to that URL, get the JSON that's on that URL, get the temperature, just the temperature data, and then return that back to my server. So I'll do request URL. You can use my API key. Yeah.
Just make sure the any form
No, please don't do that. So the API key identifies me against weather channel. So you can use the same API key if you want to. Just don't like overuse it because then it'll show up that I'm overusing it and then I can't use this API. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a HTTP request on that URL. We're gonna parse out the JSON that we get back from that URL and return that temperature data back to our front end. So what I'll do is, remember when we started the workshop, I installed this request library called request. So I'm gonna use that request library right now. So require request. Oh, that's a dot, I think. I'm gonna put a comma. And again, if you want to, this is just my convention. If you wanted to, you could always do this. You could literally declare all these variables in their own lines as variables to themselves. I just like doing this out of my convention. Feel free to have your own conventions. Now I want to look up the API for that library, for that request library. Request npm.js. I don't remember the methods on that library, so I'm just gonna read stuff up. So to make requests with that library, it accepts a string, a URL string, and a function, and that function executes as soon as it receives a response from that URL. Excuse me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing by doing a request. The request URL, which is a string, and then a function. Now request accepts an anonymous function which has three parameters: error, response, and body. Error, response, and body. So let's test this out right now. Let's console log out what we get for response. I just want to make sure that when I hit this URL up, I'm getting the response back. And if I do get this response back, I can safely console log it out. So I'm just going to be testing if I'm getting data back. So let's end this execution with Control-C, start up the server, hit up our server, boom. So turns out we got the info back. So we console log stuff out and we got back a response. Well, we got an object back, which is the object that this library provides. I want to access the body of this object. So there's a response here, response looking thing here. I think this is what it is, body. Yeah, I think it's the body. Is it console log body? Actually, let me consult this API. I'm pretty sure they have a JSON thing. Support for JSON, sets body to JSON. Request options. Okay, so they have a additional configuration on this thing. Apparently, they can either accept a URL. Let's see. Let me just read through the documentation really quickly. I want to make a request, a GET request. I want to make a GET request. So let's change that up to a request.get. So just to clear up some more stuff. All we're doing is a GET request to that API. That's why I denoted it by saying request.get. Let's see. I think that's it. That should be good. So if I Control-C this and I run it again. So backend server is listening. Hit this thing up. I should get some stuff back. I got back some data. So again, I got back an object. I don't want to get all of this stuff back. I only want to get the body that I'm getting from the server. So let me see something really quickly. I only want to get this. I only want to get the stuff back. The content that the server is giving me back. So apparently there's a body property inside this object that I want to use. So I'll just get that. Now this response.body is a string. In fact, it's a JSON string. And what do we do with JSON strings if we want to treat them as a JavaScript object? we use the JSON. Is it parse or stringify? So we want to use parse because we're getting back a string. We're getting a JSON string, and we want to get back a JavaScript object. Yeah. So I'm going to do a JSON parse on this thing. Store it in a variable. So var weather info. And now if I console log weather info dot, if I look up at the structure of the response, I have a response key here apparently in a version. So I'm just gonna test out that the parsing works by using by trying to get this 0.1 value. So to access that value, all I have to say is response weather info.response.version. I'm accessing the response key, and within that response key there's a value. So we're accessing the value, not the value. We're accessing the version property inside the value of the response object. So let me control C this. If we did this right, we should get back the version of the API that we're using on the terminal. So if I refresh this, we get 0.1 back. That's nice. So that's the same 0.1 back that this API is giving us, that this our application is being able to successfully parse. So I don't want to get the version of the API. I want to get the temperature. So the temperature is nested within current observation, which is, yeah. So it seems like it's nested under let me see, one nesting. So it seems like it's stored under current observation. So I'm just gonna use that key to access it. So current observation dot temperature temperature string temperature string.
Before you guys leave, and you guys have to go, make sure you grab a slide of pizza.
Yeah, we have pizza, by the way.
Slide, get like 1 or 2 slides of pizza. You have to send me this.
Yeah,
Where is it?
I don't know. I think Angela has it, or it's in there.
Does anybody have the list?
It's over here.
Okay, so just go over there. If you haven't signed the list, sign it. You have to go before you go.
So let me hit this up. So lo and behold, we're getting back the temperature data back. So this is the current temperature for Miami. We're returning it, we're console logging it, but you know what? I don't want to console log that thing. I want to send it through the server, my backend server, so that whenever someone makes a GET request to my backend server, it returns the information I have stored on info.txt along with the current temperature as an additional key value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to parse data. So I'm going to say my info equals json.parse data. I'm going to parse that JSON string back into an object because I want to modify that object. So what I'm going to add in that object is I'm going to add a new property in that parsed object, and I'll store the temperature in that object, that property within that object. So I'll set it equal to this. We'll remove the console log because we don't want to emit it on the terminal. We want to emit this on our server. So we'll send it. Now, because my info is an object, right? What do we want to do with it if I want to send it as an output on my server? I have to convert the object to a what? To a string, right? Because I want to send the object through the internet, but I can't send it as a JavaScript object. I have to send it as a string. So to convert it to a string from an object, what do I use? Stringify or parse? Stringify. You got it. So stringify. Let's end the execution of this. Run it again. Now if I hit my backend server up, I should get my personal information along with the current weather. We modified this correctly. And we actually did. So let me fix the, oh crap. Let me fix the thing here, right here. If we Let me minimize this. Let me refresh. If we look, we're getting, our server is returning back a JSON string with a temperature key. That temperature key, the value of that, we're not generating that. That's real-time data that's being given to us by Wonderground. So as soon as that weather drops right now, if Wonderground reports a change, it'll automatically change. The same thing, if we change our file, because Node is reading that file every time we make a request. Let's say I get a new job, say software engineer at Burger King. So get a job upgrade. I should get a change here. And notice changed here, software engineer at Burger King. So you have a fully working backend now. It's hitting up an API, it's returning back a JSON. Just like how Wonderground is returning a JSON, you're returning back a JSON. Returning a JSON of information that's important to you. Now, because it's 5:51, I don't know if you guys are up to making the front end, the web app, communicate with this. I might make a video on that. Huh? The Atom? Okay. So the code is this. I didn't expect it to take this quite a while, but I guess you guys have somewhere to go. But what I'll do is I'll record a separate workshop on how to make your web application, the beautiful UI, humongous UI that Angelo showed you, the website, communicate with this backend server that you wrote. So now you can make your front end website communicate with this backend server that you created. Notice how we basically made an API similarly looking to Wonderground's API. It's returning a JSON back. Now, you're free to experiment with this. Your backend server can return anything else. It can even, your backend server can communicate to a database, store data, return data from your database, hit up some weird API, do some cool things. In hackathons that we've gone to, some people, what an interesting hack did is it hit up every time there's a video that's being streamed, every single frame that's on that video is being sent into a GET request into some API, and a Microsoft API analyzes that frame and sees like the important people that are on that frame. So cool things like that you can actually do with the basic fundamentals you've learned today. Does anyone have questions? I guess we're ending. Does anyone have questions? No one has questions? No? Okay.
How do we get the how do we go about tracking the website?
So a basic rundown for that is for this code, we're using jQuery. So just dig into jQuery's documentation, see how you can connect to the backend server, make the same way how our Node server made a request to Wonderground, make your JS from your front-end website, make a request to your backend server. Hit that up, parse that JSON string you're getting back, and fill the appropriate HTML elements. jQuery makes that easy. Elements and make the network request.
And then in our HTML, we would have to make the request to the server.
So main.js, which is the JavaScript on the front end, it'll make all of those. Yeah. So HTML, you can't actually program things with it. But what we'll do with what you should do with the main.js is make a GET request to your backend server using .getJSON, which is a method on jQuery. And there's other methods in jQuery that allow you to modify HTML. Now you could do it with bare bones JavaScript, but jQuery makes it easier. Because in native JavaScript, it's much longer. It's much more drawn out to do certain things.
So in your index.js,
Uh-huh.
when the stuff that goes in the get
Mm-hmm.
and your response, I imagine it's a lot. You could add a lot more complexity to it.
Which one? This one?
I know
Request?
that entire anonymous function that
Uh,
entire thing.
this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can add way more complex stuff.
So, what is my question here? In order to not become like a huge spaghetti mess,
Mhm.
how would you organize this type of thing?
Oh, okay. So
Because I probably add a bunch of stuff, but
yeah,
you can't just fill up.
yeah. So
Would you make separate JavaScript files?
you can make separate JavaScript files. So an easy refactoring of this is I'd convert this to not an anonymous function, but a name function on another file. So say I'll remove that, right? I'll remove that portion now. Is it this one? Actually, it's up to here. So I'll remove this stuff out, right? So an easy way to refactor would be to store that code on another file. I'll make a new file. New file.
Meaning,
I'll put my function here.
meaning,
I'll call it
nodes.
homepage response.
The good thing
So now it's not an anonymous function because it has a name. The name of the function is homepage response. Now in JavaScript, if I'm storing code on another file, that file automatically becomes a module. So I cannot access that function unless I make it specifically public. And the way you make a function public is by doing
think of it like
module.exports.
just one thing.
You can also do exports, I think. So you can do exports dot homepage response equals homepage response, which is the name of the function that you built, just this one. You can also do this. You can also define this.
So even though I'm not doing
You can also define this by
even though I can do Power stuff,
doing this. This is another way of doing
like
this.
I'm like outsourcing the Power.
You can make an anonymous function that's defined as that. So that's another way of doing it. So that just tells JavaScript. That just tells JavaScript that hey, I want to store this as anonymous function and make it public to whoever wants to access me. So let me go to back in JavaScript and store this in another file. Homepage response.js. So now that's another module, right? So I want to access it in my index.js. I'll want to pull out that module. So homepage response equals require. And then to require that module, because now that's a Node.js module, I'll say homepage response. And I'll do homepage response dot homepage response.
There was more, but oh wait, got some
So-
pizza, guys.
If I do a Control C, this should work just as the same as the other one. So actually it wouldn't because we had some code defined here that were kind of important.
Oh, yeah.
So let me remove these stuff and put that on the other code. So request. Let me quickly transport them here. So var fs equals require fs. And I'll do request. Request. That seems good, I think. This seems good, I think. Name is homepage response here. So if I halt the execution of this, this should just be the same as the other one. Okay, apparently I get a... Wait, I got something. Yeah, it worked. So it's the same thing. So that's if you want to refactor this to make it neater,
Yeah.
start moving things into their own modules.
And
Um,
export them in.
Yeah. Also in JavaScript, there are things called promises. So you notice how quickly this gets dirty because it's
Yeah.
asynchronous. You start nesting things within things within things.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking it'll probably get really, really messy.
Yeah.
The more stuff is like.
So in JavaScript, there's a promise. So what the promise does is with the promise, I can say read file, and then next line say after you read the file, do a get request, and then after the get request, do an express response. The promise allows me to do that. So instead of having this callback that just goes to the right infinitely,
Yeah.
you can flatten it across. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Why would I know this function I can do. I can do like read file, sync.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I want to do synchronous calls?
Okay, so if you do a synchronous call,
Yeah.
the problem with JavaScript is that Node.js is that it's single threaded. So every time someone makes a request, right now you make a request, and as soon as you make a request, I also make the same request at that same millisecond.
Yeah.
That time, as soon as that request that you made asks for that file with synchronous file call,
Yeah.
you will be blocking my request
Okay.
because because Node will synchronously process and read that file before serving you. Now with the asynchronous read file, what happens is, okay, um, I want to read the file, but I want you to execute stuff after you're reading that file. So what JavaScript does is, okay, you make a request and I make a request. You're reading the file asynchronously. You want me to do this stuff in an anonymous function after you read it. So it puts it on the back burner, lets it execute. After it's done, it'll do its thing. But for now, it'll put it on the back burner, execute stuff after it's done. But it wouldn't block my request. It would service my request.
Okay.
So if you do it the synchronous way, you lose the benefits of Node because of the fact that JS is single threaded.
So if I'm accessing my files, just do it.
Yeah,
Asynchronous.
asynchronous. Even if you make network requests like this one, that was also asynchronous. Notice how we're passing a function. That function only executes after the get request is made.
Yeah.
There's a latency for the network request. That'll also block if I make it synchronous. Because during that time that network request is made, maybe billions of things are hitting my server. They'll all be waiting for your network request. So,
Does anyone have its own DDoS prevention?
no. So that one is something you'd have to look at the cluster manager or load balancer that you're using.
Okay.
So notice just a runtime. It's literally just C++, but with the JavaScript cake, the icing on top to make it easy.
So probably the dependency is for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, I actually went ahead a couple days ago and I made
It's still hot, which is a good point. I was worried it was going to be cold.
my own things to the web server, right? So it all works perfectly fine. And I have like a backend software with like if I go to page, it doesn't have anything in it. So I looked on Stack Overflow and why I only ever do it and localhost and from the rest that's where the rest
Yeah. Like to what?
Oh, by the way, if
You guys have any messages, don't refuse to ask questions.
yeah.
We have some people here. So.
I see, like when I type in the actual address on the company, then I can like the question to it was but say I'm on my phone.
You want to access it, right?
Yeah, I want to access it. So I went ahead and I tried doing.
So the problem with that is you have your operating system responsible for permission.
I was wait. I would have to actually
Allow it.
So the account does actually have a firewall. I know. I know what you're talking about. I don't know what. No problem. So you want to authorize all this security actually from WhatsApp or whatever. Oculus. And then there's another one. It's the guys, take a light. Yeah, there you go. You guys, you help me guys from
I can take back the.
Words. Yeah, words.
Make sure they don't see you eating.
Oh, is that the thing with Oh.
Okay, can return this stuff? Yeah, we'll return this stuff. We have a lot of pizza.
No, because we took forever.